Hello, my name is Ian Shalansky. This is going to be a video tutorial on how to do camera mapping in Blender 2.7. This technique is pretty useful for anyone who wants to take an image, any image from cell phone or DSLR or whatever you have, and make that into 3D geometry. Uh, I use this a lot when making new content for projections and VJing and things like that. Pretty useful because you don't need an expensive LiDAR scanner. You don't need to take exacting measures. You just go wherever you're going and snap a picture and create some useful useful representation of that. Awesome. So let's get started. New Blender file. We're just going to start clean slate and delete everything. I'm going to create a new camera in our scene and make the rotation 90 in the X and then 0, 0 in the Y and Z. Move that off to the side for a second and create an empty at origin. What we're going to do now is track the camera to the empty. This will give us a nice look at, so that the camera will always be looking at the empty. And to do this, we have to select both of them, make sure that the empty is the one with the yellow highlight select, and then press Control T to track to constraint. What this will allow you to do is now move the camera around, and it will always be looking at that point in space. Awesome. So last thing to do before we start making geometry is in your camera, you're going to set a background image, add image, open, and then select your image. I'll put this one up so you can use it, download and use it to follow along. And then view through the camera, and you should see your image right there in the background. Generally, what I like to do is put the image in front of the geometry. That's this little selector button guy here, and then play around with the opacity to see how well I've aligned everything. But this should be good enough to start working with geometry. So what we're going to do first is create a new cube. This cube is going to be our walls. And to do this, we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to set the median location to 1, 1, 1. That will put the median right in the corner of our geometry. Then select some faces that you want to delete. I'm going to delete these faces over here. Bam, bam, bam. X and delete them. So this is now the corner of that the image and the walls in the image. Then in object mode, I want to rotate this guy. I want to rotate this guy in the Z-axis. I want to rotate him 255, I think. No, 245, 225, 225. 225 degrees, and that'll give us a nice 45 to the camera. Awesome. Next, I want to create a plane that will remain on the ground. This will be our floor. We're going to scale that up so it's a little bigger, and we're going to do the same thing with wall. Let's take a look through our camera and see how we're doing. I mean, the angles are off, but like the geometry is starting to come there. We need to move our camera a little further out, I imagine, as well as our empty, just so it's easier to manipulate. So I'm going to move the empty onto that side of the corner I'm going to move the camera a little further out and see how that does. Cool. Adjust that, move it in a little bit. Great. I mean, this is lining up pretty well so far, but we have to adjust this perspective angle by manipulating the height of the camera. So if we tilt that up slightly, we should see that start to become more and more parallel. This is kind of hard to see, and you might be already adjusting your opacity to try to see that a little better. I found that the best way to do that, the best way to create a good contrast there, is to give this wall a material color. So over in this menu, you're going to create a new material and then give it a diffuse color, whatever you want. I picked blue because it's nice and easy to see against that gray. And you can already see that our lines here, our perspective indication, is lining up pretty nicely. So what we're going to do is grab both the empty and the camera, and we're going to adjust the height of both at once, kind of tracking dolly situation, and plop it down onto this molding. I found that the molding is a lot easier to align to in this image, only because it comes out from it gives a better idea of where the walls are in the space. The molding comes out for about an inch past that, and then you hit the ground, and it's just a little hard to align to, and we can always go back and add in the molding later. So I'll be aligning to the molding in this tutorial, but you see something strange is happening here. This side looks pretty aligned, but this side is still way wonky, and adjusting the Z won't help that at all. It just throws off one side or the other. So what this actually is the camera, when this image was taken, when the image was taken, the camera was probably not aligned directly with this corner in the same 45-degree fashion that it is in virtual space. So if we take our camera's X location and start to push it over a little bit, we can see that becomes a little bit more aligned, and we can start to work on making those parallel and then dropping it down, and you can see that. But the camera was definitely not aligned with the corner of the room when I took the image. Awesome. So there's that offset. Play around with this a little bit more. We can still see that this angle is a little off, which I think might be this camera height. It's looking pretty good. Let's see what this side is. Ooh, that is aligning very nicely. Awesome. Cool. So that looks about lined up. Let's see what this needs to be adjusted a bit. So we're gonna track both the camera and the empty in space now, and move it over so it aligns with that back corner, and look to see how that affected all of this. This one still looks pretty lined up, this one does not. And you know, you can adjust the opacity to see the how different it is, and if it's slightly off, that's all right. There's probably some room to fix that a little later. But you want this to be generally on the money, because if it's off, you're going to throw off the rest of your geometry later on down the road. So we'll continue on with this, and if it gives us trouble in the later on, we can fix it. The next thing I want to do though is lower my floor. This corner is aligned with the molding, not the floor. So we're just going to bring our floor down a little bit, add in a cube so we can kind of see where that is. And we'll start modeling this box here right now. So first thing I like to do when I do this is go into edit mode and adjust the median so it's at the corner of the geometry. This makes it a little easier to work with when we get there. And then set your transform to be local. That will adjust based on the normals of the cube rather than aligning with a global setting. And then we want to place the box on the ground. And the way I see this the best is when that line, that white line at the bottom, when that's just touching the mesh, I know that it's on the floor. And then we can adjust everything else in perspective. Awesome. So you can start by just going into scale and pushing your scale around so things start lining up. We will have to rotate this cube a bit so that lines up as well. And you know, just playing around with scale until things start to feel right and lined up. You can get some pretty accurate results just by playing around with how the camera is set up and where it is in space. And you have to trust that you generally got things lined up right, and then build in the manipulation later to actually align it when you're projecting on. But let's take a look at what this looks like from a top down. This is already feeling a little wrong to me. I know how the boxes are aligned, and it's not this far away from the wall. There is going to be about an inch gap because of that molding, but it shouldn't be this far away from the wall. So I'm going to align this in space to where I think it would be, and then go back to my camera and play around with the floor settings. I think this is going to be a matter of floor height that's throwing us off. So moving the floor up and down and aligning that corner again. Awesome. Rotation and the whole gambit again. You know, this is just kind of iterating over your past work again and again and again, and making sure that it all still lines up. Grabbing the back edge of this box, it looks like the floor is still a little off from where it would be. We can start to see that when we're cutting into the wall, when we're aligned with the corner here. That means that's the floor. That's the difference between your Z and Y. Right, so the green arrow and the blue arrow, something is off there, because we should be able to be this amount of depth and not be cutting into the wall. So just playing around with that that axis a bit will give us a better idea of what's going on. And this is looking about right for what we have. Great. Cool. So there is a single cube aligned in space with the wall. Awesome. Let's start working on the other ones. Now that we know that this alignment is about right, this should be a lot simpler, and it's just adding in, add in the cube and scale it and rotate so everything works out. Be mindful of the scale in real life. Might be useful to take a lot of pictures when you go to the site that you're trying to model, just so having pictures of the scene that you aren't using now would be also really helpful. Like how does a corner line up exactly and stuff like that are some useful things to have that you might not be able to do with a single camera alignment like this, but just being able to see it is helpful. And after you get everything aligned, it's pretty much just this box and this box and this box and this box. Oh no. Yeah, okay, sorry. Hangout message. I had to snooze that. Great. So this looks lined up exactly how it is in real life right now. So we can move on to the next box, which I'm going to do this one next in the back. So we're going to add a new cube. We're going to go into edit mode, align the median to the corner, and then bring this out front so we can manipulate, go back into camera, and place it on the ground. And start to mess with its scale. This is another situation where I know how the box aligns in real life. The two back corners are actually touching the wall, so that will help in this, making this box alignment easy. It also looks like this one, it has a bit of a rotation to it as well, but let's see what it looks like out here. Yeah, I think the depth is actually wrong on this. Like it's too far back in space, so we'll push it forward and push it over a bit, and then go back to our camera view and see what's up. That's looking a lot better. There's a slight rotation here. It's kind of hard to see because the top of this box is so bent. In the image, it just looks a little funky. But this is looking pretty nice, nicely aligned. So we will move on to. Oh wait, no! Look at that cut in. So it's got to come back a little bit more, which means it's got to scale this way a bit more. And I'm sure if I look at this camera, it's not even close to being aligned. Whoa. Oh, that's right. I can't see the bottom of this one either. Oh. If we pull it out, we can see where it touches the floor there, and then we can also rotate it slightly and push it back and try to align it again. This process, this is a lot easier because I'm using rectangles, but it can get a bit nerve-wracking if you're doing other shapes. So be careful that you know what you're making. Be aware of the limitations of this technique. Rectangles are very easy, but sometimes spheres or curves can be difficult. And I mean, it's possible. You just need to take your time. That's really what it comes down to. Is just take your time, go slow. Try not to get frustrated. Set aside a bunch of time in order to do it right. And the more time you put in, the better your result will be. Last box we're going to do. Here. I'm going to set it on the floor. There it is. Edit mode. Adjust the median. Oh, that did not do what I thought it did. Where did it go? Ah. There we go. Whoa, what happened? Huh. That's awesome. I've never actually seen that happen before. That's cool. I'll have to figure out why that happened. That could be useful at some point. Let's just make another box. No, a box. Edit mode. Okay, cool. Place this on the floor over here. So once you have all of this 3D geometry built, it actually becomes kind of fun to start imagining what you're going to do with it, right? You can do lots of cool lighting effects that way. You can pretty much any 3D content you make on top of this, you can project back on top. You can make all this stuff wiggle around, all kinds of stuff. You can have happen once you have the 3D world built. You can do physics simulations and all kinds of stuff in Blender, and port all of it over to Touch Designer, or just take images and bring all that stuff over to Touch Designer, which that's awesome. That's stuff that makes this fun, is imagining what it could be. Anyway, so there you go. A basic setup of a 3D environment. Just using an image. The last thing you want to do before you take this 3D environment over to Touch Designer is maybe clear out your materials, and then set a universal scale. So grab everything, double A, and then press Control A and apply your scale. And that will take everything and set its scale to 1, 1, which when you bring it over to touch, you won't have any like crazy numbers from your whole scaling process. Yeah, so there you have it. That is how you take a image from a camera and make it into a 3D scene. All right, next time. See ya.